Hello everybody. Well, as we progress into the 2025 season, we're starting to do more and more really nice detailed colonial work, and there's some tooling that I'm going to need to manufacture in order to get this done. Now, one of the things I've talked about in previous videos is actually doing those nice tenon joints for the joinery and a lot of the things like the small trivets, the meat cookers, all that kind of good stuff. And to do those nice tenon joints, you need what they call a monkey tool. And if you can see, this looks like a hammerhead, but it's actually a monkey tool. What happens is that once you formed your tenon, this piece goes over the tenon and you can tap it from here and it makes a nice square shoulder so the tenon goes through and fits up very firmly. Now, this particular type of monkey tool I had never seen before. The first monkey tools I had ever seen, Jay Riekert had made, and essentially what they were is they were just a square, heavy piece of metal, maybe like a half-inch thick piece of metal, with a hole drilled it and then welded to a section of heavy pipe. This was the type of monkey tool that Jay used for years. It wasn't until I picked up Mark Asbury series of books that I saw a monkey tool that looked like this. Now, the problem is that even I went through a couple of the other blacksmiths on YouTube, and everybody is doing monkey tools like this, and it works fine. There's no reason it can't be done that way. But my question is, how was it done originally? I don't think I have ever even seen a picture of an original monkey tool. And that the reason I say that these can't be done or can't easily be done like this back in the old days is because of this hole. This requires a twist drill to drill it out. And the twist drills didn't show up until the late 1800s. So before that time, when you're doing this particular work, did they have a monkey tool? How would you make a monkey tool without the ability to have a nice twist drill? Ugh. It's early in the morning, folks, and I didn't have anything but rice for breakfast, so you're gonna have to work with me, okay? So I got to thinking on my porcelain throne, and I'm like, I wonder how we could do this. I said, one, we're gonna need to actually punch that hole. Now we can clean it up with a file, but it's got to be punched, and then it still has to have clearance on the backside, and it still needs a good heavy handle. So what we're going to attempt today is I'm going to use some 1 inch by 3/8 inch stock, and I am going to attempt to make a traditional monkey tool. Now, let me say again, I've never even seen a picture of a traditional monkey tool. I don't know what it looks like. So again, we are relying on the swag method, the scientific wild ass guess to get this done. So you can see that I've put 3 marks on here. The center mark is where we're going to punch our hole first, and then we're going to make some bends, and then we're going to fold these sides up and forge weld them together to make our handle. That's the plan, at least. Now, I cannot tell you if this is going to go well or what's going to happen here, but we're going to give it a shot, and maybe it'll be close to what the originals were. If anybody has a picture or has any knowledge of what an original monkey tool looks like, please let me know. Let's get on it. All right, guys, I can see my mark pretty well, so we're going to set it into place. Remember, as I always say, make sure and keep that punch twisting. And I think I've got just enough on the back side here to be able to find and center the hole. It's actually not centered over my Pritchell hole, so you can see it didn't quite knock that plug out. Now, it's still a little warm. We're going to risk it. It may have worked. The risk may have paid off. It did. Now, the great thing is I don't have to necessarily worry about how clean this hole is, because we're going to come back in with our files to actually bring it down to the size that we need. So that should not be too much of an issue. So now we just need to get some good tight bends right here. As you get into the finer work, you're going to need finer tooling. A lot of the things that we do here, we're kind of doing off the cuff. And much like the trivet video, it can work, it's just not going to be great. You know, understand that in these blacksmith shops, a lot of them were highly specialized, and that means they had highly specialized tools for the items that they were making. So when you see something that has a perfect corner, it wasn't the guy just stood up and hopped over the anvil and says blip, blip, blip. No, sir. He had special tools for all of it. So if it looks like magic, it's most likely tooling. As I was thinking about how we want to do this, I originally were planning to make 2 bends in the vise. I don't know if that's going to get me to where I want to go, so we're going to try something a little radical. So the fact is I do have a hole already punched through there, which sets me up, as long as I've got the hole through there, I can get files in there to clean it up. I don't want a super wide face, so I think what we're gonna do is right over that hole, we're gonna make this thing into a bend. We're just gonna bend it right there at that center point, not on either side, and then we're gonna use the hammer to back it up and flatten it. Maybe it won't destroy the hole. So I'm gonna put this about 1 inch above here. See if I can pull this down and keep it halfway centered. That did not work at all. That sucked really bad. That's a complete failure. So through the magic of editing, we're gonna try this again. Actually trying to bend it over the hole, terrible idea. Actually stretches and distorts the hole, don't do that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to very carefully put a bend about 1 inch on either side of our punch hole itself, and we're going to try it that way. Other way sucks, no good. Okay, that's better. Okay, there may be hope after all. Okay, let's talk about problems. So the trick is I want about a 1 inch gap in between here. That's really what I'm after. Our issue is the fact that I can't get that tight of a bend just using my vise, because the vise jaws are too tall. Now, if I had a bend that had about 4 inches of gap right here, I'd be okay. But we're looking for 1 inch, and that's simply not going to work. Now, at this point, we're back to the situation where, well, what we would need to make is some sort of bending tool that would be on the top of the anvil. This morning, I'm going to cheat a little bit and perfectly say that, that we need some sort of bending tool for this piece to sit down in there and to fit like this, so that I can hammer this side around that 1 inch gap. Now, since this is a one-off tool, or at least at this point, I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to take my 1 inch square bar, I'm going to pop her in here, and I'm going to tack her in on the long side so that I can bend this area here. Again, going back to what I said at first, if it looks like magic, it's most likely a tool. And the proper way to solve this would be to have some sort of bending tool rigged up that you could have a way to get in there and make that tight of a bend. Just not going to work on your vise unless your vise jaws are super, super skinny. So guys, real quick, just to make sure, I went to look in my inventory of old tools, and I don't have anything to do this with. Ideally, what we would have was we'd have a bending tool with 2 1 inch square posts as opposed to round posts, and it would be only a 1/2 inch gap in between, so it'd be a very precise bending tool. One thing I did want to show you here, this is my tool for making tent stakes. Basically, you lay your 1/2 inch in and you can actually bend this down to the correct angle. I got tired of having to do this in the vise, of opening the vise and closing it, but a tool like this for something like this would be a great thing. But if this were 1 inch across, this would be fantastic, but it's simply not, so we're going to have to do what we do with the other one. So the minor solution, and trust me, this is not the greatest solution. You guys can see that I've tacked in the piece. I'm going to take a heat right there and then fold it back over. Yes, it's janky. In your shop, tooling is absolutely king. Now, if you've got a lot of experience, you can do a tremendous amount of bubble gum and duct tape work and do workarounds, but it's not going to be the quality that you want, and it's certainly not going to be in the time frame that you want it to be. So it is usually the rule is, if you're going to make more of 4 of one thing, make a jig for it. The more I get into blacksmithing, especially using the power hammers, I understand that this work is more about the tooling than it really is the blacksmithing. Because if you're going to be productive, if you're going to make a lot of cool items that are of high quality, you got to make a bunch of them, and that means you've got to have the right tool for the job. All right, let's see how well our suck tool is going to work here. So far, so good. All right, Yeah, who's a loser now? All right, this is not too terrible bad. Got enough square, man, look at that. And we're actually, boy, I lucked out. We're even centered. So that is not terrible, ladies and gentlemen. We've got a good square bend. Could have been a lot easier if we had had our tool set up, but I'm not going to argue with that. That's pretty darn good. All right, so guys, I want to show you one other cheat that I'm taking the liberty of this morning. What I want to do now is I want to take these two legs and I'm going to pull them together and forge weld them into a solid piece for our handle. However, I don't want the area behind our hole to close up. So I've taken a piece of that 1 inch and I've conveniently tack welded it into place. Now, as you be working this, again, having a second person, they could take a piece of bar and pop it in there on the anvil while you're working. Again, because I'm by myself, I'm going to avail myself of the handiness of my MIG welder. So we'll take a heat, we'll bring these pieces together, get them fluxed up, and fuse them together and see if we can't make our piece do the job we need it to do. Let's go. All right, guys, here we go. We got these guys hot. And I'm going to work it from both sides to try to keep it as reasonably even as possible. I completely failed at that task. So we're going to fix it in post. I'm good enough with that there. I'm not worried about it being super even there. I can come back and adjust that once our weld's done. What I am going to do is I'm going to run over to the horn of the anvil real quick, give her a tap. In the summer, it is terribly important to get the white powder all the way down into the crack, or you're not going to have a good day. Now, the good news about working this thicker metal, and this stuff is right at 3/8 of an inch, which gives me a 3/4 inch stack. It's heavy, it's got a lot of thermal mass, and that's going to make a forge weld a whole lot easier. But now, one thing, I was actually talking with some of my Patreons the other night, and they asked why I was wearing a glove on both hands. When I'm forge welding, I always wear a glove on both hands because that spatter will get you. There's been very few times I've ever done heavy forge weldings like this, and I haven't had a glove on, that I didn't catch spatter. So whenever I forge weld today, gonna have both gloves on. All right, guys, this is a super light heat. That's good enough for me there. We're gonna come back and resprinkle, and we'll take it up for a fuller heat. All right, we've got ourselves a good welding heat. Yes, sir. That ought to do the trick. Now, if you'll notice, guess what? This thing's bouncing all over the place. Why? Because I'm having to use different tongs that don't exactly fit this rectangle. These tongs are designed for holding square on the corners. All right, I'm going to take one more heat, and I'm going to try to get on up there just a little bit just to make sure that we're sealed. We're going to do a little bit of shaping on this piece, and we should be good to go. Okay, well, look at there. We're looking pretty good. All right, I'm going to run over to the vise and straighten this up just a tad bit, and then we're going to check her out. So, guys, here we go. You can see we have a handle now. We also have a cleaned up bit right there, so that's a little oversized from 1/4 inch. When I do these, I usually do a couple of drill sizes up just to give my 1 inch some relief, because, again, it doesn't have to be perfect. You're still going to come in and clean it up with a file. But we have enough relief area here to get a pretty long tenon, and we also have a striking surface. Now, I will tell you what I really would have liked to have done in retrospect. Again, the mass is good enough for me, but I really would have liked to have added some extra handle material here, because right now I'm going to have to kind of hold it like this. It'll work, but I'd rather have a big firm grip with about 3 inches coming out to the side of it so I can really kind of get in there and smack it. However, this is for a smaller 1/4 inch tenon, so I should be able to get away with it. But let me not say I should be. Let me grab a piece of 1/2 inch, let me knock a tenon on it, and let's see if she works. So guys, we're gonna make just a small tenon. I think that's looking pretty good right there. We'll take another heat and go ahead and draw her out. Well, that's going to hell quick. All right, we're back on track. Now at this point, if I had myself a swaging tool for doing the 1/4 inch tenon, boy, I'd be way ahead. And so let that be a little bit of foreshadowing. We're gonna have to use a lot of this tenon joinery coming up. So one of our next videos is absolutely going to be to make a swage tool for our anvil to make these 1/4 inch tenons. But let's take one more heat and we should be ready to go. Okay, guys, I'm going to make sure this is nice and straight. I will then go to our grinder or our file and we will clean this up, and we're going to make certain that our monkey tool will actually clear this going over here. We can hammer it down. I usually just prefer grinding it just for a good fit, and then we'll get up to that shoulder, take us a good heat, and go to our vise and see if we can't give ourselves a good fit. So guys, one thing again, I do go to the grinder and I make certain that she does fit in there. If there's a little hinkiness in there, you can always drive over it, but the problem is if you actually have a bad spot and you start hammering, you can kink that tenon and now you're just in a mess. So I would tell you that when you're getting ready to do this, go to the grinder, go to the file, make sure she fits up to the shoulder or at least close to it like this. And you can save yourself a tremendous amount of hassle later. So let's take a heat, go to the vise, and let's see if our monkey tool is going to do the job. All right, guys, here we go. I'm going to set about 3/4 of an inch behind the tenon. You can see we've got plenty of clearance. And now I'm actually going to use a lighter hammer for this. And again, to account for any issues in the tool itself, I rotate it around, and let's take a look. Oh, we're getting there close. That is not terrible bad for a first pass. I'm going to take another heat. We're going to do it again. One thing to remember if you're doing these tenon joints in a coal forge, turn your blast all the way down. That 1/4 inch tenon will melt very easily. Make sure your piece is flat in the fire. Now, if you're working a gas forge, it shouldn't be as much of a problem, but if you're doing coal, buddy, you sneeze the wrong way, you're going to lose that piece. All right, back to the vise. Lock her in tight, and let's do this one more time. Look at that, boys and girls. Look at that nice shoulder. Now, you're going to get some wobble as you do this. That's not a problem. We're going to go back to the top of the anvil. We'll clean and straighten that up. Yeah, that is not terrible at all. So just a little bit of cleanup. Let's straighten it up. And guys, check that out. Now, that's fresh off the monkey tool. We'll still need to do a little bit of file work on there just to get that perfect, but man, it is hard to beat that right there. She did an excellent job. So again, I guess, you know, I've never seen an original, but it works. Maybe somebody figured this out. Who knows? Maybe there's a way better way to do it and I just don't know it. But that works, and that's pretty super easy. and it didn't require a bunch of drilling with the twist drill. So this could absolutely have been the way they did it. I'm just stupid, and I don't know if they did. Okay, well, that was failed successfully, boys and girls. You know, one of the things about these new videos, and I think I've mentioned this before, is a lot of this stuff that we're doing, because of the heat, we're jumping out here at the first thing in the morning, and I don't have any reference for this work. So this is what we call literally pulled right out of my hind end. Now, thankfully, I excel in those situations because those have been the situations I've been in most of my life. However, I'm looking forward to getting some tooling done and all the kind of good stuff that we can actually do some professional grade products very shortly. But until then, we're still going to pull these right out of our hind ends, and we hope you enjoy the spectacle, you know. And my camera lady's freaking out because, like, you know, because she's a very visual person, right? So when I say terrible things like putting your feet on raw pork chops, it just pops right into her mind and she can't stand it. So guys, thank you so very much for being here at Purgatory Ironworks. I'm your host, Trenton Tye. If you enjoyed this video, understand it is brought to you by the kind support of all of our Patreons, Mark Blosser, Corey Cooper, among many, many others. Thank you all so much. And if you want to help support the channel, go over to Patreon/Purgatory Ironworks and help out. Don't even have to pay anything. There's a free sign up for Patreon with extra content, behind the scenes, all that kind of good stuff. I think you'll like it. So folks, thank you again. See you next time right here on Purgatory Ironworks.